Hey dudes, Silvite Soltis here, and today I've got another gearing guide for you. After seeing the great reception to my first priest gearing guide, and getting feedback from several people, I decided to keep working on these types of simplified gearing guides to help out those of you who want to raid, but don't want to spend weeks and weeks tracking down every single pre-raid best in slot item first. I also want to make sure that this guide is as accurate as possible with what items will be available at launch. So for this reason, I've decided to continue with a general caster gearing guide, since that's the information that I have most readily available. Before getting into it though, I would just like to remind you all that this guide is by no means a best in slot walkthrough, and each caster class has its own niche items that players should really consider trying to get beyond what I've included in this video. Hell, if you manage to get tons of gold early on, you can probably just buy enough decent gear from the auction house too. However, as a general get geared quick guide for those of you that want to do some dungeons, I think you'll find that this guide suits the bill just fine. So without further ado, let's gear some casters. Step 1. Run BRD as soon as possible. So just like in the priest gearing guide, you should consider running BRD as soon as possible. There are a lot of great items that are available for casters, just like for healers. The difference, however, is that you can start doing the detention block and arena runs much earlier, since there's really only a few items deep in the dungeon that are good for caster DPS. There are robes from Emperor Dagran Tharasan, boots from Golem Lord Argolmok, and the trinket from Ambassador Flamelash, but really that's it. I'd recommend setting up your own groups as well, so that you can start farming the detention block and doing the arena farms as early as level 50. That way mobs will still award a decent amount of experience, but it's really up to you. Anyway, here's a list of all the most appropriate items from BRD that casters can make use of. For the headpiece, you can go for the Chief Architect's monocle from Phineas Darkvire. For shoulders, you can go for the Kentic Amiss from High Interrogator Garistan. For your back slot, you can try to get the Sprite Caster Cape from Houndmaster Grebmar. For a chest piece, you can try to get the Robes of the Royal Crown from Emperor Tharasan. For gloves, there are the Silkweb gloves from Hedram the Creeper. Now, this is an arena event, which means that there are, I believe, 6 bosses that can spawn, and these gloves are not really the best, as they've got MP5, so your healers will probably want them, but it's something. For your waist slot, you could also get the Banthok Sash from Oakthar the Breaker, which is a different arena boss, and this item is really good because it has hit on it. For your feet, you can try to get the Omnicast boots from Golem Lord Argolmok. For your finger slot, there's the Cyclopean band from, again, Oakthar the Breaker in the arena, and even though it has strength on it, it's still pretty good. And for your trinket slot, you can get the Burst of Knowledge from Ambassador Flamelash, which is a really great item for any caster. You can also get the Kindling Stave from Pyromancer Lorgrain, which has crit percentage on it, but no spell power. You could also get the Enthralled Sphere from High Interrogator Gerstan, in case the Kentic Amiss doesn't drop, or if you really don't have a better offhand. And for a ranged weapon, you could possibly pick up the Pyric Caduceus from Pyromancer Lorgrain, which is good for fire mages, but it's really just a wand for anyone else. It's not going to be the best wand ever. You're actually better off going on to step 2 for a wand, in my opinion. Step 2. Do these quests before level 60 if possible. When you're not running BRD, and when you are getting closer to level 60, try to complete the quest chains that end with the quests In Dreams, It's Dangerous to Go Alone, the Battle of Darrowshire, and Order Must Be Restored if you're Alliance, or the Scarlet Oracle Demetria if you're Horde. All 4 of these quest chains give powerful items that will really be beneficial once you actually hit 60 and head into Molten Core and Onyxia's Lair. In particular, the Arclight Talisman from the quest The Battle of Darrowshire is a very powerful neck for caster DPS, and probably won't be replaced unless you get a good drop in UBRS later on. The same goes for the Spirit of Aquamentus from the quest It's Dangerous to Go Alone. However, unless you have a good main hand, it doesn't really make sense to walk around with just an offhand. However, the best item you can probably get in this step is the ranged weapon Storm Rager, which has nature damage and is basically just a stat stick, but considering the lack of really solid wands early on in WoW Classic, it's probably the best you're going to get. The famous quest In Dreams offers casters the Shroud of the Exile, which is a really nice cloak, but if you manage to get the Sprite Caster Cape from BRD, this isn't really an upgrade. So if you're a mage or a warlock, you can probably skip this. But if you're playing a hybrid class, you might want to just do this quest anyway, to pick up the healing ring. After all, it's really, really good. Step 3. Do lower Blackrock Spire, and work on your Seal of Ascension. Okay, so you've gone through BRD, and you've done some really good quests. You're probably around level 60, and you're ready to hit up the endgame dungeons like Strat and Skolo, right? Well, not exactly. After I looked through the various loot tables and compared items in Strat and Skolo, I found that there's really a better option for casters as a whole. Lower Blackrock Spire. Now this dungeon is huge and kind of a pain, so you might not think that it has that much going for it, especially for casters. But what it does have is 2 different wrist items you can get, which are always a pain to find. Some absolutely overpowered gloves and legs, neither of which are really found in BRD, and some more plus hit on some boots from War Master Voon. Plus, there's a general lack of overlap on loot between bosses, meaning that you could get really lucky and win like 5 items in a run. With all that said, you can probably see why it's such a good idea to run LBRS. While you're in here though, make sure that you have the quest to get your Seal of Ascension too, as it'll help immensely once you get to step 4. Here's a basic rundown of the items that you should aim for in LBRS. For shoulders, you can try to get the Sunderseer Mantle from Crystal Fang. However, this is a rare spawn near Mother Smolderweb, so you might not see it too often. For wrists, you can possibly pick up the Magister's Bindings from Trash Mobs, or there are also the Funeral Cuffs from Shadowmaster Vashkajin. For your hands, you're going to want to try for the Hands of Power from Quartermaster Zigris, which are absolutely amazing gloves that all casters should be trying to get. Similarly, you can pick up the Sky Shroud Leggings from High Lord Omok, which are some of the best legs for casters in the game for quite a long time, if I'm not mistaken. For your feet, you might want to try and pick up the Caesar's Boots of Precision from War Master Voon, which have no spell power, but have hit on them which make them invaluable. Finally, you could also pick up the Trindlehaven Staff from Overlord Wyrmthalak. Now, this item is not great, since it only has a few spell power on a 2-handed item, and is not quite as good as your Spirit of Aquamentus in that regard. But it's something that you could possibly pick up while you're trying to get the Seal of Ascension anyway, so you might as well go for it. Finally, it's worth noting that Mage Tailors can also snag the pattern for the Robe of the Archmage off of trash mobs here. And this item could cover their chest slot if it's still bare after the next step. Step 4. Do Upper Blackrock Spire. Alright, you've braved 2 dungeons and done a bunch of quests. If you were lucky, you managed to get your Seal of Ascension over the last few weeks, and this will be a great boon for you going forward. It's time to hit up the big dungeon, Ubers. Upper Blackrock Spire has a ton of items for casters. However, there is a little issue with this, as some of them are locked behind events like Solakar Flame Wreath or the rare spawn Jed Runewatcher. Still, if you're the lucky owner of a Seal of Ascension, you can set up the group and make the rules of the run. So, yeah. Here's a list of all the useful items that casters can aim for in UBRS. While you're in here, fill in the blanks in your armor as best you can, or pick up some upgrades if you're lucky. For your headpiece, you can get the Starfire Tiara from Jed Runewatcher, and as a little fun fact, this is the item I used on my priest way back in the day. For your neck, you can get the Tooth of Nar from General Dracasath. For your shoulder slot, you can try for the Devout Mantle from Solakar Flame Wreath, just like Leroy Jenkins. For your chest, you can try for the Tier 0 chests, Devout, Dreadmist, or Magisters from General Dracasath. For your waist, you can try for the Dust Feather Sash from Solakar Flame Wreath, which is the second item this boss drops. For legs, if you haven't gotten them from LBRS, you can try for the Spirit Shroud leggings from the Beast, which are really good. And for boots, you can try for the Dragon Rider boots from Warchief Rend Blackhand in the Arena event in the middle of the dungeon. There's a nice ring for fire mages from Pyroguard Emberseer called the Flaming Band, and there's also a really good trinket from Jed Runewatcher called the Briarwood Reed. Now this rare spawn also drops another ranged weapon, the Serpentine Sculler, so you can probably see that Jed Runewatcher is one of the more lucrative bosses in this dungeon. However, Jed Runewatcher is a rare spawn, so how can you guarantee that he'll be in your run? Well, luckily, if you're the one running the dungeon, you can check to see if he's in your instance by running up the first stairs of the dungeon and hitting a /tar Jed macro. If he doesn't get targeted, he isn't there. But if he does, he is, and you should run the dungeon. It's really worth doing this too, as his loot table consists of only 3 items, and they're all good for casters. If you made it through all of BRD, LBRS, and UBRS several times, congratulations! You should be at least somewhat geared up. However, if some loot still eludes you, there is one last thing you could try. Step 5. Filling in the blanks. Stratholme and/or the auction house. If you're sick of lava, orcs, and dragons, it's probably a good idea to shake things up a bit. And what better way to do this than to head over to everyone's favorite plague-ridden, still-on-fire dungeon? That's right, the last stop for this gear guide, assuming that you still don't have a main hand weapon, or just really want to get a neck that has spell hit on it, is Stratholme. Well, live Stratholme, at least. Strat Live is great because the last boss, Balnazar, drops a really awesome neck with hit rating on it. He also drops a dagger, which is a bit underwhelming to be honest, but if you have the Spirit of Aquamentus, it's something. And if you're checking this guide in Phase 2, he has some shoulders as well. It's also pretty easy to find a priest willing to heal for this dungeon, as many of them will be trying to farm the True Faith Vestments pattern. Combine that with the fact that you can possibly pick up some good BOEs and crafting materials for gold, you can probably see why this is a nice place to finish off a couple of possibly empty slots. For your neck, you could pick up the Star of Mysteria from Balnazar, which is an item that has hit, a rarity in WoW Classic. If you haven't already gotten shoulders by Phase 2, this same boss also drops the Shroud of the Nathrazim, as well as the Gift of the Elven Magi, a main hand weapon. If you still need a waist, you might pick up the Grimgor Noose from Timmy the Cruel. However, you should note that he only spawns in the courtyard outside the Scarlet Bastion after killing all of the Scarlets outside. So be careful not to kill them too fast in the wrong place. Finally, you can pick up boots from Hearthsinger Forest Inn, the Magister's boots, which are decent if you're a mage or anyone else that's trying to collect that set. As a final note, you could also try for the Postmaster's set in this dungeon. However, this whole event is very tedious, so I won't go into a lot of detail here. I will say though that all 5 items are quite good for casters, and especially the helm, so look into it if you think you want to have a challenge one of these runs. Once you're all dungeoned out, hit up the auction house for any high-level green items or appropriate blue items that might be in there. But even if you have any gaps at this point, you should be pretty much good to go in Molten Core and Onyxia. So, bring on the whelps. I hope that you found this caster gearing guide useful. It was a lot of fun to sift through and analyze all of the dungeon's loot to create this list for you all. Here at the end, I feel that I should also mention that there's still a ton of items in different dungeons that are really great for individual caster types. Like all of the bonus shadow damage gear over in Skullaments for Shadow Priests and Warlocks. But as I was just trying to make a general caster overview guide, it didn't feel right to focus on them specifically. If you'd like a best-in-slot guide for your class, there are about 1 million out there to choose from. But if you followed what I laid out here, you should be good to go no matter what your class is. Anyway, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this guide or found it useful, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. I have a few more guides planned, so stick around and see what comes in the future. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter for updates, and check out my written content over on Blogspot, as I have written versions of all of these guides over there as well. But anyway, until next time, and WoW Classic. Thanks for watching, and take it easy, guys.